Hi, everybody. Welcome to the bottom line of sports, episode numero dos. I think that means number two. I'm Sean Jacques Taylor. He's Jeremy Pink. And we like to talk about that intersection where sports and money come together. Uh, what's on the topic list today, bro?
Man, well, I think your Spanish is really good. That's the Ohio State education kicking in, I think. We're talking three very topical items today. We're talking about college coaches' buyouts, pegged to James Franklin's buyout at Penn State. We are talking about sports streaming, how consumers are actually watching sports on TV, how that's changing, why it's changing, and what it all means. And the third thing we're talking about today are Major League Baseball playoffs that we're in the middle of right now. We're talking about playoffs, but also payrolls and the importance of payrolls in playoffs today. And finally, of course, we're talking about the wonderful 6-0 Ohio State Buckeyes. So with that in mind, Jacques, I'll leave it to you.
So James Franklin gets popped. Gone. Vamoose. Get out of here. We don't want you no more. I got to say, I was not necessarily shocked. I mean, you can't lose if you're Penn State. We are. You can't lose to UCLA as a 20-point favorite and follow it up to a loss to Northwestern as a 20-point favorite and really expect to keep your job. The only question was they owed that man just about 50 million. And it was, do you really want to swallow that? 50 million? That's a lot of paper.
Yeah, it's an enormous amount of money. I think it points to a couple of things. One is that the amount of money that some of these college athletics programs have has increased dramatically in the NIL era. There's no question about that. That's number one. And number two, what that's led to is really a lack of patience by schools with football coaches right now.
Now,
And
here's a question.
yeah,
And let me ask you this. They've always been impatient, but I think because they're almost answering to investors now, it seems like it's a business. Like I invested $1 million to get this quarterback for you, and now you're losing. I need somebody to take care of my investment. You see it like that, or you see it another way?
no, I think that's exactly right. I think you're right is in that the schools have always been impatient, particularly the traditional football power schools have always been impatient. However, that impatience is on steroids right now for precisely that reason, which is that it is you have boosters, you have lots of NIL money, you have lots of sponsors, and they're expecting a return on what they've invested in. And they're expecting a return very quickly. They also want to see that the program is developing. They don't want to just see, oh, we've had some success this year. We want to see we've had success this year. We can see a pathway where we're going to have sustained success in the future. And that's what's happened to James Franklin, even though he's done, by all accounts, a very good coaching job there.
Right.
He cleaned up the mess. He cleaned up the mess after Bill Callahan cleaned up the mess. He kind of took it to the next level, but he couldn't win a big game, and the fans became impatient. The school became impatient. And most importantly, the boosters and the sponsors became impatient.
Well, his problem was, and we kind of saw it manifest itself against Oregon, which is if you're Penn State, and you kind of look at the schedule like this, you're like, okay, we got Oregon making that cross country trip to us. I think at the time, maybe they were both in the top five, I think.
Hmm.
It's a game really where if we're evenly matched, we probably should win it at home. And then they turn around and, get dominated the first part of the game and then have to come back tied up and they lose in overtime. But it's amazing how you could be a top five program, have this whiteout, this national game of the week. We're sitting up here talking about, oh, I can't wait to see Oregon and Penn State play.
Hmm. Hmm.
Maybe they were throwing number three and number seven at that time. But then, for whatever reason, they lose the game, and then 2 weeks later, 16 days, he's unemployed. Now he's $50 million richer right away, but he's unemployed. And it's just the speed in which all of that happened and all that went down is just shocking,
It's
even for college sports.
it's remarkable. It's what was it, a 15 day, as you said, a 15-day or 16-day sort of dramatic turnaround. And what's interesting about his buyout, though, at least the reporting that I've seen, is that he's scheduled or slated to get $50 million in the buyout. However, there's language in the buyout that says he has to essentially actively look for work, that he can't
The
sort of sit back and take that buyout. He's got to actively look for work, and it has to be in something that is,
it's TV or
broadcast.
football, I think.
It's broadcasting, scouting, or coaching, one of those three. And the
The
reason it's
key,
those, well, the reason, sorry, 1 second. The reason it's those three is because the amount of money that he earns in any of those roles that he would take in broadcasting, scouting, or coaching is going to be a significant amount of money, and that the school gets to claw back that salary from the $50 million buyout. That's why.
but that's what I was trying to ask you. Here's the key question: the language still has to be specific. Otherwise, you say, "Okay, School X, I'd be happy to work for you. Y'all can pay me $1 million a year, and we'll leave Penn State on the hook for the other nine." And so I've seen it one time a while back. Somebody had similar offset language in their contract, and it said something to the effect of you had to be paid at the normal going rate for
like a
that
market
job.
like a market rate payment.
Yeah, you had to
Yeah,
be paid at market
yeah.
value because there was another instance where what I just said happened. Somebody was like, "Yeah, you can pay me," and they were like a salary that was they would never accept that if they didn't have the offset language in the contract. And then
Yeah, yeah.
depending on
So
how mad you are at the spot, that's how much you want to determine your new employer pay.
right, right. So I imagine there is, again, I haven't seen the contract. I imagine there is language like that in the contract that it has to be market rate. But I, what it reminded me of, interestingly, I don't know why, I don't think it's perfectly analogous, but what it reminded me of was the clause that was supposedly in Kyler Murray's contract that he had to watch video for a certain number of hours in a day. And
Yeah.
and it kind of struck me that I know this kind of language is common in contracts. I know it's really common in contracts, but it sounded to me, again, I didn't see the contract, but the reporting that I read on it, which was pretty good, actually very good in front office sports, sounded to me, at least I interpreted it this way. Certainly front office sports didn't say it. I interpreted it as the school kind of anticipated that this might happen in terms of Franklin not making it to the end of the contract, and kind of wanted to put that language in just to ensure that they had some kind of cover. It just reminded me of the Kyler Murray contract language in sort of in an
Uh,
indirect way.
he had a 10-year deal. Now, here's the interesting thing. What happens is one coach gets a 10-year deal, and then every other coach says, well, I got to have a 10-year deal too.
Mhm.
That's a long time to lock somebody into a football contract. To have success for that many years, or think somebody's going to have success for that many years. I wonder which institution is going to be like, no, you don't get a 10-year. We'll give you 5. And even if we give you 5 and every year there's a rollover, so you've always got a 5-year deal, we might do something like that. But we're not giving you 10, man, because if something happens, we can't get out of it. And now the flip side of that is, though, Texas A&M paid 76 million.
For, for, for
Penn
your boy
State is
for your
paying
boy Jimbo,
50.
right?
Um, that don't make John L. Smith's 31 million at Michigan State seem like all that much.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was looking at some professional coaches, like, because I think that Sean McDermott is now reminding me of James Franklin, but at the NFL level, which is that he's a coach, he wins a lot of games every year, he gets to a certain point in the playoffs, but he can't get over the hump and he can't win the big game. And I was thinking, I wonder what Sean McDermott's buyout is. Sean McDermott's buyout is a fraction of what James Franklin's is, and it's less than the Michigan State coaches as well. So it's interesting that college football and institutions, because the institutions are the employers of these coaches,
Right.
those are the organizations that are on the hook for this amount of money, and it's actually less than what professional coaches contracts are often.
Now, that flipped a few years ago, man. Maybe in the last 15 years, where it used to be the goal used to be, let me get to the NFL where the big money is.
Mhm.
And then now it became, why should I leave college and go to the NFL? Because the big money is here in college football. Because, I think they're viewed much more now. And maybe it started with Nick Saban as with his success as CEOs of organizations, because you've got all these different moving parts and you need somebody at the top who can orchestrate it, somebody who can talk to the boosters and the money people and all of that, but somebody definitely in control at the top, running the entire organization with a bunch of middle management up under them.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a really I think that's a really sort of compelling analogy is the CEO analogy. The other thing too that I believe has happened with college coaches is that 10, 15 years ago, sort of pre-NIL, the coach ruled the school. The coach was really important to the school. He controlled the recruiting, he controlled just about everything. Now, there's a lot of other forces at play other than just the coach. So, I think that's why you started to see, some coaches, you saw Nick Saban leave, you saw Chip Kelly leave, you saw coaches who had been in that environment for years starting to see that the college coaching landscape was changing in such a way. And I think that is I think that's an element of what's happened over the last 5 to 10 years.
I think the change is that they don't have the power they used to have over the players.
That's exactly right.
And, it used to be I could tell you to sit down and shut up, and now I can't do that because you'll leave. And I mean, I don't think it's any secret. Most of these college coaches are type A control freaks. And so when you can't threaten, I mean, how do you threaten me? You just gave me $6 million to come play for you. What are you going to say to me? There's nothing you can say because guess what? I will hop in the transfer portal and I'll go. And I think it was one thing when Nick Saban had to beg somebody's kid to come play for him. I can live with that. But now I got to beg him, and I got to pay him, and I can't say nothing to him because he might just leave. And it's I think once you reach a certain status as a coach, it's just like it's too much. I can't handle it. I got to go.
Right, right. And I also think it means the school then realizes that and will pull the trigger to let go of a coach earlier because of exactly that. They know that what's going to be as much of a power in terms of a draw to a school as maybe a Nick Saban was 10 years ago. $5 to $6 million is a lot more powerful draw for a kid to go to school than who the coach is.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and the institutions, I think, realize that and are able to make a quicker decision on a coach than they might have in the past. So I think we're probably seeing an imbalance in terms of the duration of the contracts of a
Yeah.
college coach, and I think you'll probably see that imbalance change as the power shifts a bit in the overall landscape of college football.
Bottom line for me, James Franklin had to go, but he's not going to be the last big money buyout coach to get paid off to go do something else.
Bottom line for me, I see college football coaches' contracts changing pretty dramatically over the next 3 to 5 years, sort of hand in hand with NIL and with paying players. And I think those contracts will have less guaranteed money. Newer contracts in the future will have less guaranteed money than we currently see.
So, dude, we've been talking about it for a minute, but it finally happened. And I was shocked because ESPN and Fox are supposed to be rivals. Yet here they are teaming up on another sports bundle. And I got to tell you, when I saw this news come out that there's a bundle you can buy for ESPN and you can buy for Fox, all I could think of was this is one more flipping decision I got to make about do I need this? Do I not need this? If I need this, do I got to get rid of something else that I have to make it make sense? And I was just like, geez. But that's the era that we live in right now, man. Everything's streaming and everything's available.
Yeah, yeah. So if you look in last year or early this year, uh, there was essentially a deal that wasn't the same as this, but that was similar to this. That you had Fox and ESPN and others coming together. They were going to offer a all sports streaming bundle. So it
Right.
included ESPN, included Fox. There's something called Venue. Now, Fubo basically took Fubo, which is the equivalent of like a YouTube TV type
Yes.
internet what's called an internet video supplier, equivalent of like a cable provider via the internet, like YouTube TV. Fubo basically said, "Look, you can't do that. We've been asking to do that for a while, and if you do that, that'll really hurt our business." So that ended up being stopped by the courts. So venue never actually happened. But you started to see that kind of pressure for the sports this, the TV guys, the sports guys, the rights holders to kind of come together, because exactly what you're experiencing as a consumer is something that all consumers are experiencing, which is I want to watch sports. And most people are unlike me. I think I'm one of the last 10 people on the planet that has a cable TV subscription, right?
Yes,
So
I believe you are.
right. So for me, I see all the games at once, but if you don't have a cable TV subscription and you want to get a streaming service, which is often can be, much more cost effective than a cable bundle, it's a lot of work to figure out what to do if you want to watch all different sports if you're a sports fan.
Yeah, my son's got this problem right now because he doesn't have cable, and occasionally I kick him off my YouTube TV because I'm using it. And so and so I was looking at this and I was like, you know what, this might be the kind of thing that works for him because it's $40 a month, but you get ESPN, FS1, and Fox, which is really all he wants anyway.
Yeah, it depends what type of sports fan, you are. If you want to get every sports offering, or lots and lots of sports offerings, including the regional sports channels, uh, cable bundles or YouTube TV right now might be slightly more cost effective
Right?
than getting a bunch of streaming services together. Although nobody really knows because it's changed. The landscape is changing. The landscape is changing so rapidly. And also just so again, for those of you who don't know, I do some consulting on sports rights and sports rights fees and things like that with a couple of firms. And what you see with sports rights right now is that those are just escalating at a pace that is, the rate of change of the increase in sports rights fees is going up at a pace that is much, much greater than revenues that are around these
You wonder
sports.
almost how much they have that much money.
Yeah, I think some of it right now, there was two reasons right now. One is that the media companies are no longer competing with media companies, they're competing with tech companies, right? And tech companies, the main part of a lot of their businesses often isn't media necessarily. So if I'm Amazon, media is a business for them, but it's not their main business. So
Correct.
they have a lot of cash that they can deploy to escalate media rights, for example, as can an Apple, and to a certain extent, as can a Netflix, because a Netflix has a very different model than traditional media organizations. But so there's the traditional competitors for sports rights have changed a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. That's driven up the fees as much as anything else. And the other thing is that most consumers who are younger prefer streaming. They don't prefer, they're not going to get a cable and satellite subscription. So what's happening with all these streaming services is that the ESPNs and the Foxes of the world are positioning themselves so they have a streaming product to offer to people like your son, and it's at a price point that your son could probably afford, or certainly figure out how to
He can
afford.
ask his old man to pay for it. Yeah,
Exactly.
and
But then
not
he'll
get
have,
yelled at.
but then ESPN and Fox will have a direct relationship with that consumer at that point, where they didn't have it. But before they had it, the relationship was via an intermediary, whether it was my cable system here or YouTube TV or whatever. So I think there's a whole bunch of things that are going on that make because sports are so coveted, because that drives such significant viewership, there's a lot of forces that are unrelated to revenue generation today that are driving sports rights fees higher.
Now, I just saw something when I turned on Hulu the other day that said, "Hey, do you want to buy this ESPN bundle with Hulu and Disney
And
and
Disney.
something else?"
Mhm.
And see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I just looked at this and I spiked it because I was like, I don't even feel like reading it because it's too much going on. I got YouTube TV. I'm good until I feel like I'm missing something. I'm not even looking at anything else.
Yeah, I think consumers are facing that issue right now, which is there was a major push to unbundle cable TV. So people didn't want to accept whatever the choices of channels that were offered to them. They wanted to make the choice on their own. But
Right?
now making the choice on their own right now is really hard to figure out. How do you pull it all together? How do you remember all your
Yeah,
passwords? What do you do? So there's
bro.
now a movement toward rebundling. And I think the ESPN and Fox is a move toward a little bit of rebundling. The Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN is essentially all Disney products. They want to bundle them together because ultimately, I think that's ultimately what's going to happen there is that those products are really going to become essentially one service in some way. But it's crazy times. And the other thing is, if you follow the M&A, some M&A activity that may be happening is Paramount, which is the
There's
parent company.
CBS, right?
Yeah, CBS, exactly. Uh, is looking at has made a bid that so far, or appears to have made a bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, which is TNT and TBS. So those two may be coming together.
It's a lot of alphabet soup right there.
Yeah, it's hard to figure it out if you're a sports consumer right now. It's a lot of work.
Bottom line for me, I'm tired of all these bundles, and I'm not going to stand for it. I'm sticking with YouTube TV till I see better.
Yeah. Bottom line for me, I'm sticking with cable TV also. It gives me what I want, but more importantly, I'm in the New York area. The cable TV system that I have, the cable offering that I have, I can get all the Yankees games, I can get all the Mets games, I can get all the New Jersey Devils games, and I can get all the regional games. And that's as important to me as almost anything else.
Have you paid much attention to the baseball playoffs? And I say that because you're in New York, I'm in Texas, Dallas, and baseball is really a regional sport. If the Texas Rangers ain't in it, dude, we don't care down here. It's all about football. But since you're in New York, even though the Yankees
Yeah,
lose.
man. I'll tell you what, I'm like I'm a very odd person because I'm a I grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan with the big I grew up in the Big Red Machine era, not to date myself, but the
I'm
big
with you.
a Big Red Machine era, which was still I think the greatest era of baseball for me. So I've always been a Reds fan. I've because I live in the New York area, I've become a Yankees fan, and both my kids are in LA, and I love Dodger Stadium and I love going to Dodgers games. So I kind
Okay.
of follow three teams, in no particular order at this point. But
Now, see, I
but
got to tell y'all, we've been friends for 50, 40 years, 50
yeah,
years, somewhere in there, long time. We just discovered we were both Big Red Machine fans.
yeah, it's amazing that we didn't know that. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the Big Red Machine. I can give you the lineups.
Yeah,
It was just great, and I was lucky enough that my parents took us, maybe once a year to go to a Reds game.
right.
I can tell you that was the single biggest day of my year going to a Reds game, and I don't think we did it every year. We may have gone every couple of years, but it doesn't matter. It's like it was the most important thing to me at that time. But here in New York it's very regional in New York. But what I think is interesting is very regional in New York, like it is with the Rangers. I know, but what I think's happened in baseball in general is that I agree with you. It's a regional sport. Clearly there's a lot of evidence for that. What's interesting this year is that the television ratings for the playoffs across the board are up sharply, including the Mariners Tigers game that went 300 innings the other night.
Um,
That was the highest rated game of the playoffs so far.
I watched. Let me see. I didn't watch the whole thing. I checked in the eighth inning, and I stayed probably until the 13th when I fell asleep. And then I got up the next morning and checked the score. And I watched it because I'm a sports fan, and it became riveting baseball. And so that's why I watched. And I would imagine that's why most people watched it because,
Because of the
uh,
theater. Yeah.
yeah, because I don't think there's a whole bunch of Mariner fans hanging around, and there's not a whole bunch of Detroit Tiger fans.
No, not at all. It,
But, and that brings the question to me: do you think, like, now here's what I'm saying. Do you think baseball is making a comeback? Because when baseball became that three outcome sport for about 5 or 6 years, homer, strikeout, or walk, I just bounced, man. Now, I always liked baseball as a kid. I really enjoyed covering baseball as a columnist, especially when Ryan Washington was taking the Rangers to the World Series, because I like the chess match in the game. But dude, when it became homer, strikeout, walk, I was just like, this is literally the most boring sport ever. And I checked out for probably uh okay, up until the Rangers won the World Series.
well, you see, what I think's happened is there have been rule changes that have been made to whether
to
it's
bring me back.
the shift to shorten at bats and give pitchers a fixed amount of time to make their
I don't know.
pitch.
You like that? You don't like
I do. I like it.
it?
I like
Okay.
it. I didn't like it at the beginning. I'm so used to it now. I can't imagine going back. Um, but what I also think's happened is that the sport has leaned into its stars a lot more, and that's
As
not
it
something
should.
that, yeah, as it should, and it should follow the path of the NBA to a certain point. But what that's done is that's created a major payroll discrepancy in Major League Baseball right now. So in general, now it's not perfect, but in general, the higher payroll teams right now clearly are the ones that are going to win most of the World Series and do the best in the playoffs because they can buy the best players and they
Um,
have the most money.
let's put some perspective on this. I think it's ridiculous that the Mets have a $323 million payroll. Not that that's ridiculous. You can pay whatever you want to
Uh-huh.
pay. It's ridiculous that they got a $323 million payroll, biggest payroll in baseball, and the Miami Marlins got a $67 million payroll.
Just in terms of the absolute discrepancy.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And my point is, and that goes for the Athletics and the Rays
Mhm.
and the White Sox and the Pirates, who are all under 100 million. My problem with baseball is if you want to be the Yankees, you want to be the Dodgers, you want to be the Mets, you want to spend whatever you want to spend, but there should be a floor to it. Like you should have to spend a certain amount just because you got a franchise. Like, because all these owners are still making a ton of money and you just sticking it in your pocket. You're not putting it into the team, trying to make a better product for your fan base. You're just like, oh, we can get by with an $87 million payroll. Woohoo! That's more money for the trust fund for the kids.
Well, and I think you're going to end up. I think we're on collision course for a some sort of labor, whether it's a lockout or a strike or whatever. Most likely a lockout is what it looks like when the collective bargaining agreement expires, which I believe is in about a year. And I think the sticking point on that is going to be owners want a salary cap, players don't. And that is fundamentally what you're talking about. It's not exactly a salary cap, but it's actually a salary floor is what you're
It's a
talking
salary
about.
floor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's an interesting idea. And there's something like that in the NBA. There's the
You got to
teams are
spend a certain
required.
amount of money. Even the
Yeah,
NFL has a certain amount of money you have to
right.
spend.
Right. And that may be a solution to where we're headed, in a year, or that may be one of the solutions to where we're headed. But for now, it I think the regionalization of the sport intensifies because most of the biggest payrolls are in the biggest cities in the country. Even the Rangers are usually in the top 5 or 6 in payroll.
Not next year, they not.
They're not next year. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
No,
And,
their
and so,
ownership
but
has
but you
already
look at
been
you
like,
look at
hey,
the
man,
you look at
we take that paper. Huh?
Southern California, New York. Toronto is interestingly enough is often pretty high up in terms
But
of
they're an
payroll.
international city. They should be up there.
Philadelphia and stuff. So the big city, and it's intensifying the regionalization in sports. That's why I was surprised when I've seen the television ratings for the playoffs so far this year. They're actually pretty good. Now that's a function of I actually think baseball's done a better job of marketing itself with the stars, number one. But number two is the way ratings are measured have changed a lot this year compared to last year. It,
Really? In
it's,
what way?
it just functionally including what's called out of office viewing, out of office, out of home viewing. So trying to figure out how do you measure viewers who are watching in a sports bar, who are watching in a gym, or who are watching elsewhere, and the audience measurement normally did not take that really that much into account up until the last few years. And this year the change has really happened. But even despite the change in measurement, we're seeing a lot of interest in baseball this year. I've been surprised because you have Toronto, which is an international team, Seattle, which is a very regional team, uh,
Yeah.
that are doing well, and you have Milwaukee, which I think one of the smallest market teams in the country.
Yeah,
Uh,
and they got one of the smallest payrolls at 115 million.
yeah, I think they're in the 20s, right? They're in the bottom half of the league
Yeah.
in payroll, and So to get that much interest in baseball that's going on, I think that actually bodes well for the sport. And I think that reflects a lot of the changes that have been made over the last few years and that baseball is leaning more into stars. I mean, I think Cal Raleigh has been a great star this year. Yeah.
No, I think it's good, and plus he plays on the West Coast, and not a lot of people notice him.
Right.
And like I would say, because the Seattle plays in American League West and same division as the Rangers, they are a classic team that caught fire in the middle of August, and they've just been riding a wave ever since then. Because I hadn't really paid much attention to Cal Riley till he hit like number 50.
Oh,
Um,
oh, okay. Here's I'm going to give you a Cal Raleigh, who's a switch hitting catcher, a switch hitting power hitting catcher who's really manages the game really well, handles pitchers really well.
yeah,
He's an incredibly valuable player. That's precisely the reason I had a problem with the movie Bull Durham, right? Because if you think about it, Kevin Costner was a switch hitter,
yes,
power hitting catcher who was very intelligent. There is no way he's
he's
staying
going
in
to
the
be in the minor
minors.
leagues.
There is no way. And so for that reason alone, even though I'm a Duke guy and I love Durham, I can't take Bull Durham. That was the fatal flaw in the movie Bull Durham for me. It's something that's bothered me for years.
um, when you talk about the salaries, man, I thought it was interesting when I looked at this list that if you look at who's left, you do have the Blue Jays at number 5.
Mhm.
You got the Mariners at I just
They're,
saw them. Where did they
they're
go?
about 15, the Mariners. Yeah.
Yeah, they're 16.
16, yeah.
You got Milwaukee that's 23, and then you got the big boys, the Dodgers at 321. But it's interesting because that's just the final four. But the other playoff teams, like the Phillies were 4, but you also had some other teams like Cleveland was 25. Detroit is 17.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it was all spread out this year in terms of who made the
It
playoffs.
it
It
is
wasn't just payroll
it,
based.
it reminds me again, not to draw, I'm drawing these ridiculous analogies, but it
No, feel
reminds me
free.
a little bit of the NCAA tournament where yes, all of that's true, but when it comes right down to it, one of the high payroll teams wins. Do you know that I looked this up. Do you know the last time a team that was with I'll ask you, what is the last team that had a payroll in the bottom half of the payroll? So it was payroll 16 to 32. What was the last team to win the World Series that had a bottom half payroll?
I'm just going to guess Arizona.
2003 Marlins.
That was going to be my second guess.
Right. Well, that's a good guess, but that'll show you that's 22 years ago. So
Okay, so the
that's
Nationals had a big payroll when they won.
the Nationals were in the top half. Yeah.
Okay,
So, and well, at least according to the research that I did, which that
yeah,
and
yeah,
$3 will probably get you a cup of coffee, right? But but um but yeah, so I do think that it is when it comes right down to it, you look at the Dodgers. The Dodgers had no bullpen at all this year, but because
how do you spend 321 million and have no bullpen?
yeah, well, ask the Yankees, ask the Dodgers. I mean, neither team had any bull. I mean, following each of those teams this year was once you hit the sixth, seventh, eighth inning, you had no idea what was going to happen with either of those teams. But once you hit, although Sasaki had a rough night Monday night in the playoffs, he had been emerging as their closer. But once you get into a limited series where you've got all the best players, you
Yeah,
can deploy them in a way that other teams just don't have that depth to deploy the players in a
no,
short
this is true.
series.
That's
And
why
that's
you
and
can.
that's I think why they end up winning at the end.
And a lot of teams, well, not over the history of baseball, and the team that comes to mind is the Mariners that won 114 games.
Oh, the
Uh,
Ken Griffey Jr. team.
yeah, my buddy Mark McLemore was on that team, and I go, dude, how could you win that many games? Then I think they got bounced in the first round of the playoffs, and he said, oh, he said it was real easy. He said we were a great regular season team. We were built for the regular season. We were not built for the playoffs because we didn't have a lot of stars, and whatever flaws we had against better teams in a short series, they were all exposed.
Right, right. And you look at the Tigers this year. I think the Tigers did better than people thought because they had such a
Yeah,
horrendous collapse at the end of the year because they have I think maybe the best pitcher in the major leagues in Skubal. And
right.
Skubal becomes if you're in a 5 game series and Skubal's pitching 2 of them, you got a chance every single time.
Oh, well, this is why before the Rangers, had the biggest spate of injuries you've ever seen and had a total collapse the last 3 weeks of the season, I was still talking about heading into September. I was like, if the Rangers somehow can squeeze into the playoffs, there will be nobody that wants to deal with them because they got Jacob deGrom and Nathan Eovaldi to go twice in any series, and both of those guys had an ERA right around 2. And they got enough other pitching that even though their hitting stinks, it's playoff baseball. Ain't nobody scoring a whole bunch of runs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could have seen a scenario where they snuck into the playoffs and did some damage because they were much more built for the playoffs than they were for the regular season.
Without question. And I think that's been a common thread for playoff baseball over the last probably 30 to 40 years. But because pitchers command so much money, the higher payroll teams they just have better depth in pitching. And
Guys,
that's
one conversation we need to have one day. What's a scarier proposition? Paying an NFL quarterback 5 years and Dak Prescott 5 years and 200 million, or paying a Major League Baseball starter, 5 years and 305 million.
I don't know. It's a good yeah, it's a good question. I would say from an owner's perspective, I
Yeah.
would say paying the pitcher because it's guaranteed salary. So
See?
if I'm looking at it from an owner's perspective, that's probably what I would say. But from a pure sort of competitive point of view,
Well,
I,
see,
I
the problem is
yeah,
when you draft the quarter when you pay the quarterback. I guess when you pay him the second contract, you have an idea whether he can play. But when you draft him and you pay him, you have no idea. And then for a pitcher, every time they throw a pitch, you're just like, I hope he doesn't throw out his
yeah.
arm on this
You
on
think
this pitch.
you just look down and say, wait, is he going to be ready for a Tommy John surgery next
That's what
week?
I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
how many starts before you get your first Tommy John? I
Right,
mean, it's
right.
it's. I mean, you can't even enjoy Jacob deGrom starts as phenomenal as he is because after every start, you're like, is he going to throw a bullpen the next day so we can make sure his arm is fine? I mean, you can't even enjoy it because his history, like, he had a phenomenal season. He threw more than 100 innings for the first time since 2019.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
And he was phenomenal this year, man. He ended up with like a 2.5 or a 4 ERA. But all you can think of was, okay, this is the most innings he's pitched since 2018. Is his arm going to fall off next
Of
year?
course. Of
I
course.
mean, it's just,
It's like one of my favorite things to watch in all of sports is a really great starting pitcher. I used to
yeah,
like Steven Strasburg with the Nationals. I
yep.
would tune into any if I could watch his games, I would watch any one of his games.
I used to
The guy
like
Paul
Verlander in his
Skeens,
prime.
Verlander, of course, but Paul Skeens at Pittsburgh right
Dude,
now.
I
Ooh,
would pay him. We used to have this question, and we used to say it because we were in the media, so we are all at all the games for free. And the question was always, who would you pay regular ticket money, $150 to go see? And I was like, oh, I'd pay to go see this guy or this guy. But yeah, I would pay to go see Paul Skeens because
I without a doubt, I would pay to see uh, Shohei Ohtani, which I do pay to see Shohei Ohtani every time I go to LA when I can. Um, and I'm in LA. Yeah, I'm actually in LA later this week, but I try to go. I won't be able to go to a Dodgers game this week, but I try to see Shohei Ohtani. I would want to see Tarek Skubal from Detroit. He's just
yeah,
amazing to watch, and I'd want to see Paul Skeens right now. But I just think watching a great starting pitcher is one of the quintessential sports viewing opportunities that a fan has in I think in all sports for me.
I get down with that. I would also say I like watching the NBA stars do their thing because they like before the Mavericks made the dumbest trade in history and got rid of Luka.
Uh-huh.
I was part of a season ticket consortium, and the beauty of it was anytime you watch the Mavericks play, 3 times a night, Luka was going to do something that made you go, "Oh my god!" It might be a pass, it might be some ridiculous shot, it might be some steal, some kind of transition movement, but there was something 2 or 3 times a night you were gonna go, "I can't believe that dude just did that."
Do you think when you watch the NBA in person and then when you watch it on TV, at least for me, watching it in person is a completely different experience, and
Oh yeah,
I have a completely different appreciation of the players. That's why I was lucky enough to see Magic Johnson play in person. Magic
you are
Johnson,
old.
yeah, I know. I know. Magic Johnson in person. You know what it reminded me of? And you know who had the same, I'll tell you, I had the same reaction to a quarterback, which I'll tell you about in a second. But Magic Johnson, when he would play, when I watched him play in person, it was like when you'd go to an AAU game and you'd have
Right?
two really good teams, but there would be one player on one
Yeah.
of the AAU teams that was better than everybody else and was clearly better. That was watching Magic Johnson. And so I've always been a huge fan of his game. It doesn't translate that way on TV, though.
No. One last thing. I went to a hockey game last week and with good seats, and again, I was like, "Oh, I forgot how good these guys are."
They're, first of all, they're huge now, and they are the speed at which they play now is
No,
just incredible.
no, no, no. Bottom line for me, we need a floor. We don't need no salary cap, but we need a floor for baseball teams. Owners, quit putting all that money in your pocket.
Bottom line for me, I tend to agree with you, but I don't know. I think there's going to have to be a solution to the salary issues and the discrepancies in payrolls, particularly as baseball is starting to gain a lot more momentum in terms of viewership, and that it
Yeah.
can't shoot itself in the foot again. All right.
How about those Buckeyes? I heard a lot of, and I hope you weren't amongst this crew. I heard a lot of complaining about a 34-16 win over a team that was ranked in the top 20 on the road. I mean, I just heard, I was like, these people are insufferable. Nothing is good enough. I was married to a woman like that once.
Uh,
I shouldn't have said that, but it came out.
yeah.
But I was just like, golly, man. The score was 34-10. They put some backups in. They go down and score. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's so I'm probably not quite at that level, but I grew up in Columbus. I went to Ohio State undergrad. I was lucky enough to go to a couple Ohio State games as a kid. So for me, it's just my blood is scarlet. So I get to that point, and then I have a very good friend who's a really a who watches the games closely. He gambles pretty heavily on almost all the games, and he's texting me, during a lot of the college football games, and he's the one who gives me a reality check. He's like, "You got to relax," uh, He's like, It's Ohio State's better than everybody. That they are a great team. That anybody would be pleased to have that team. But I think, look, I think Ohio State is playing. I think they're methodically getting better every week.
See, I would say that's a very good. I like that. That's a good way to describe it. Like I see Saying doing a little more every week, and some. Now I could be completely wrong. I think some weeks they go, let's see if this works, because they know that they're better than most people. So I think some weeks they experiment a little bit to see. Well,
Certainly
let's
true.
let's try
Yeah.
this out and see if okay, that didn't work. Let's
Hmm.
toss this out.
Hmm.
And I gotta tell you, I was not at all pleased with Matt Patricia as a defensive coordinator. But the things that he's doing and what all the real experts say that he's doing on defense is just insane. In terms of, I'm more impressed that he's gotten these players to teach it to them so that they can execute it. And
Right.
I don't know if that's because they got a particularly smart group of players right now, or what the deal is, but
Well,
what they're doing for college quarterbacks, man, you're just screwing them. They can't really figure it out.
so when you watch the Ohio State games, and I know you cover the Cowboys and you've been to a million professional games. can you see that when you watch it? Can you see their defense remind you of the defenses in professional in the NFL?
Nah, I'm not that good.
You can't.
Uh,
But the
but
people,
when you go back and look at it, and you hear people explain it to you and show it, then it all makes sense because the NFL. And here's what I can say, and I'm not breaking news here. The NFL is all about disguise. It's all about making your safeties, because safeties tell what the defense is doing. It's about making your safeties look like they're doing one thing, and at the snap of the ball, they're doing something else. Well, you don't get a lot of that in college. You get some of it, but he's doing it at a calculus level for the Buckeyes, meaning very rarely in college are you playing man on one side, zone on another. And so when I look back as a quarterback and I say, "Oh, it's zone," and I throw it and it's man, I mean that ends up in you holding the ball because you're not sure what you see, and now you get sacked. And I think it'll be interesting because the thing that slows that down, like I'm not looking ahead, but I'm looking ahead. Say they play Indiana in the Big Ten championship.
Mhm.
I don't care about your safeties if I'm running off tackle. You know what I'm saying? If you
I
can't
do.
hold up against or better yet, when they play Michigan, daggone well Michigan quarterback is not going to throw the ball a lot. So can you handle it when they say we don't really care what your safeties are going to do because we're just going to run it between the tackles and see if we can just line up and physically beat you, and
Yeah,
that'll
and
be the test
right, and they're not going to get a test like that.
until that
Possibly,
game.
possibly Penn State may have a lot to play for in a couple of weeks, and Ohio State might be the single most important game to galvanize the school.
I think
But I
that's
don't know.
another thing that people don't take into consideration when they're being very critical. Like I don't mind being critical if I really see it, and I'll say it, but they are like the Cowboys of college football. Them and Alabama's got the same problem. Like
Mhm.
you are literally everybody's biggest game.
Absolutely.
Like you're literally. I mean, like Wisconsin, which got stomped last week, will come out and play their best game of the year for a quarter or a quarter and a half until you make them go away. But it's hard to play like that, man, where you are everybody's biggest game. I mean, it's like me when I was everybody's biggest date. Everybody wanted to date me. It was hard out there. That's
Yeah,
why I
I know.
decided to
That's
get
when.
married.
Well, I think that's when you lived in fantasy land for those couple of years, right? Uh, but it's. I think it's an excellent point, and I think that I was at Duke when they won back-to-back titles
Name
and
dropping.
NCAA basketball, and with the Grant Hill years and the Christian Laettner years, and it was exactly like that. It was, and I think you even saw it with Ohio State last year in the college football final. I think Notre Dame came out and said, "We're going to punch you in the face. We're going to go after you. We're going to do whatever we can." And Ohio State took the punch. They punched back, and Notre Dame was exhausted by that point. And then Ohio State did what Ohio State usually does, which is they blow teams out, and then they forget there's a fourth quarter, and they let them back in. But that's okay. They still win the game. Uh, so anyway, so what's your bottom line on the Buckeyes?
Bottom line is, I like Matt Patricia's defense, and it keeps getting better and better every week. I haven't been excited about the defensive team. Like Silver Bullets were always cool, but I was never like super excited about the defense. I am super excited about the defense these days.
Bottom line for the Buckeyes for me is I'm looking forward to the last couple of games of the year. I think they should be able to get through this next few games, and then their final game of the year, final regular season game of the year, and then if they are fortunate enough to win most of their games going forward in the Big Ten championship, looking forward to who I believe they will play Indiana as well.
That'll be a war.
Yeah,
That would be a war.
absolutely.
Yeah. Uh, anyway, it's been a good time. Don't forget, please rate, subscribe, review. We can take it. We know it's great, but we don't mind. We don't mind hearing you write it down and say
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I've been called just about every name in the book, so you can call me whatever you want. It's all
Yes.
good. Yeah.
But whatever you do, college champions.
There.
Jeremy Pink, I'm Jean Jacques Taylor. This has been Bottom Line on Sports. Till we chat again. You guys watch your money and your sports.
All right, we'll see everybody next week.